Cracks in the enemy. Russian command in disarray. On the front lines and behind the lines, Russian command is showing signs of strain. Orders are delayed, conflicting, or never delivered. Generals argue over priorities while soldiers improvise to survive. Ukraine's relentless push has created chaos within the Russian military hierarchy. The southern front, once heavily fortified and coordinated, is now a maze of isolated units and disrupted communications. Commanders at regional HQs struggle to assess the situation accurately, often relying on incomplete or outdated intelligence. This disarray has tangible consequences. Convoys are sent into ambushes, reinforcements arrive too late, and morale plummets. Even elite units, trained for coordinated attacks, struggle to adapt to the fractured command structure. In Moscow, propaganda tries to mask these failures. News outlets broadcast carefully selected victories, but analysts within and outside Russia notice the inconsistencies. Every misstep becomes fodder for criticism, speculation, and rising fear. Ukraine exploits this weakness. Targeted strikes against command posts, sabotage operations, and rapid advances all exacerbate the confusion. The army is fighting, but the leadership is faltering. Europe watches closely. This is not just about territory. It's about the collapse of coordination, the loss of strategic initiative, and the erosion of authority. When command falters, even the strongest forces become vulnerable. Ukraine's approach demonstrates that modern warfare isn't just firepower. It's about strategy, timing, and the ability to exploit weaknesses in the enemy structure. And in this battle of minds and logistics, Russia's cracks are becoming impossible to hide. Urban warfare, the battle for Melitopol streets. Melitopol, a city of strategic importance, now transformed into a crucible of urban warfare. Streets that once echoed with daily life are now scarred by rubble, burnt-out vehicles, and shattered windows. Every alley, every intersection, is contested ground. Ukraine's forces approach methodically. Infantry moves house to house. Tanks provide cover, and drones hover above, scouting for threats. Precision is key. The aim is to neutralize enemy positions while minimizing civilian casualties. Russian defenders, though outnumbered and demoralized, fight fiercely. Snipers, barricades, and improvised explosives slow the advance, turning the city into a dangerous maze. Each building cleared becomes a small victory. Each street secured shifts momentum. Local civilians endure the horrors silently. Families hide in basements, shops are abandoned, and curfews transform neighborhoods into ghost towns. Yet amid the destruction, resilience emerges, messages of hope, secret aid deliveries, and the quiet determination to survive. Europe watches closely. Analysts note that Melitopol exemplifies the complexity of modern urban combat. Victory is not just about territory, but coordination, intelligence, and the ability to adapt under fire. Ukraine's strategy here is layered: direct engagement, disruption of supply lines, and psychological pressure. Each day of control gained chips away at Russian morale and sets conditions for a broader encirclement. In the streets of Melitopol, the war becomes personal. Every advance is measured in meters, every engagement a test of courage, and every victory a step closer to isolating Crimea. The fall of Tokmak, strategic breakthrough. Tokmak, once a heavily defended Russian stronghold, now faces the full force of Ukraine's southern push. For months, it has been a thorn in Kiev's side, a city critical to supply lines and the defense of the land bridge to Crimea. The fall of Tokmak is not just a tactical victory, it is a psychological one. Russian soldiers stationed here face encirclement, dwindling supplies, and constant pressure from precision strikes. Every lost street and building sends a clear signal. The noose around the southern front is tightening. Ukrainian forces coordinate ground assaults with artillery and drone support. Bridges are targeted to prevent reinforcements, while snipers and engineers clear defensive positions systematically. The operation is meticulous, designed to minimize casualties while maximizing strategic impact. As the city falls, European observers note the significance. Cutting Tokmak disrupts Russia's logistics, weakens troop morale, and accelerates the collapse of their southern front. Supply convoys once considered secure are now exposed. Commanders struggle to maintain order. with conflicting reports and fragmented units becoming the norm. For the civilians, the liberation is bittersweet. Homes are damaged, streets are scarred, but the presence of Ukrainian forces brings hope that the occupation's days are numbered. The capture of Tokmak demonstrates Ukraine's growing ability to combine conventional and asymmetric warfare. It is a textbook example of strategy, intelligence, and resilience converging to create a decisive outcome. In the broader war effort, Tokmak's fall marks a pivotal step toward isolating Crimea and reshaping the balance of power along Ukraine's southern front. Severing the bridge, Crimea on the verge of isolation. The final lifeline connecting Crimea to mainland. Russia is the land bridge through southern Zaporizhzhia and Tokmak. Ukraine's strategic focus is clear. Cut this connection and isolate the peninsula completely. Precision artillery strikes target key road and rail routes. Bridges once thought untouchable are damaged or destroyed, forcing convoys to reroute through vulnerable areas. Every strike slows Russian reinforcements and disrupts logistics, tightening the noose on Crimea. Drones play a pivotal role. They scout, monitor, and even strike remote positions, ensuring that Russian engineers cannot repair the routes quickly. The psychological impact is immediate. Troops and commanders realize that Crimea is no longer secure. European analysts note that isolating Crimea is more than symbolic. It threatens Russian supply lines, weakens troop morale, and shifts strategic momentum. A peninsula once considered invulnerable now faces shortages of fuel, ammunition, and food. For Moscow, this is a critical failure. The isolation not only undermines military operations but also shakes confidence at home. Propaganda struggles to mask the truth. Russia's ability to defend Crimea is eroding. Ukraine's strategy demonstrates a blend of patience, intelligence, and technological advantage. It's not just about winning battles but shaping conditions, so that the enemy has no choice but to react. And as the bridges fall, Crimea teeters on the edge of isolation, signaling that Ukraine's southern campaign is nearing a decisive phase. The siege tightens, Russian forces cornered. With Tokmak fallen and supply lines severed, Russian forces are cornered along the southern front. The siege is no longer hypothetical. It is tangible, relentless, and closing in every day. Russian units, once confident, now find themselves trapped in pockets, surrounded by Ukrainian positions. Artillery fire, drone strikes, and sniper attacks prevent any organized retreat. Communication breakdowns exacerbate the chaos, leaving commanders to make impossible decisions with incomplete information. Morale plummets. Soldiers, isolated from reinforcements, witness comrades fall and supplies dwindle. Even elite units feel the strain, unable to mount coordinated counterattacks against a versatile, adaptive opponent. Ukraine's approach is surgical. Rather than risking mass frontal assaults, forces encircle, isolate, and tighten pressure gradually. Every move is calculated to minimize Ukrainian losses while maximizing Russian disorientation. The psychological effect mirrors the physical siege. Rumors spread through the ranks. Panic emerges where discipline once ruled. The perception of inevitability sets in. Russian troops begin to anticipate defeat before the final blow is delivered. Europe observes the strategy closely. Ukraine's success illustrates modern warfare principles. Mobility, intelligence, and precision can dismantle larger, better-equipped forces without the need for overwhelming firepower. The tightening siege around Russian forces is a testament to strategy, patience, and resilience. It is the precursor to liberation, the moment when the tide of war clearly shifts, and the enemy is forced to confront the consequences of failing command, disrupted logistics, and relentless pressure. Civilian resilience, life under siege. Amid the chaos of encirclement and strikes, civilians in southern Ukraine endure the war's harshest realities. Cities scarred by artillery and drones are not empty. Families remain resilient and determined to survive. In Melitopol and surrounding towns, residents navigate streets lined with rubble, fetching water from wells, and relying on limited supplies delivered under the cover of night. Schools are repurposed as shelters. Hospitals operate with minimal electricity, yet medical staff persist in treating the injured. children, despite fear and uncertainty, find moments of normalcy, drawing, studying, and playing in basements transformed into temporary classrooms. Community networks strengthen under pressure. Neighbors share food, provide shelter, and create communication chains to warn of incoming strikes. Local leaders coordinate with Ukrainian forces to ensure civilians are protected whenever possible, blending survival with support for the military effort. Europe watches closely. Reports of resilience and everyday heroism reinforce the narrative. Ukraine is not just defending territory, but the lives and dignity of its people. The contrast is stark. Where Russian forces rely on intimidation, Ukraine relies on solidarity. Every act of courage, no matter how small, becomes a story of defiance against invasion. It reminds the world that modern war is not solely about armies or strategy, but about people who endure, adapt, and inspire hope. In these besieged towns, life continues, imperfect, dangerous, yet unyielding. The civilians' perseverance is as crucial to Ukraine's victory as any tactical maneuver or technological advantage, illustrating that the heart of defense lies not only in weaponry, but in spirit. The Black Sea advantage, Ukraine's strategic depth. The Black Sea has always been a strategic pivot in the region, but Ukraine has transformed it into an arena of tactical dominance. By controlling maritime approaches and leveraging drones, small naval craft, and intelligence, Kiev now wields an advantage far beyond its size. Sea drones harass Russian patrols, striking fuel depots and supply ships before they even reach Crimea. Precision artillery from coastal batteries ensures that key ports are under constant threat. Every Russian naval operation becomes risky, requiring coordination, secrecy, and constant vigilance, a far cry from previous dominance. Ukraine's advantage is amplified by geography. Shallow coastal waters, islands, and narrow straits limit large-scale maneuvers for Russian ships. Small, agile, Ukrainian craft exploit these features to disrupt supply lines and isolate key positions. Intelligence and electronic warfare complement the physical presence. Ukrainian units intercept communications, track fleet movements, and coordinate strikes with artillery and drones. Even the smallest victory, a disabled radar station or a forced port closure, has ripple effects on the southern front. For Europe, this is a masterclass in strategic depth. Ukraine's ability to combine geography, technology, and tactical innovation demonstrates that control over key terrain can offset numerical disadvantages. The Black Sea is no longer a safe zone for Russian forces. Every maneuver is calculated, every movement observed, and every supply line vulnerable. Ukraine's growing mastery here illustrates that in modern conflict, dominance is not about size, but about intelligence, precision, and adaptability. In this theater, the sea itself becomes an ally, amplifying Ukraine's reach and turning the Black Sea into a corridor of opportunity and pressure for Russian forces. Cutting off Crimea, the final southern push. Ukraine's southern campaign reaches a critical juncture, the final push to sever Crimea from mainland Russia. Every strike, every maneuver, and every logistical disruption has been building toward this decisive moment. Bridges and highways connecting the peninsula under constant threat. Precision strikes target fuel depots, rail lines, and command posts to prevent reinforcements. Drones patrol from the air, ensuring that no Russian convoy passes unnoticed. Ukrainian ground forces advance along multiple axes, converging on remaining strongholds that maintain Crimea's link to the south. Tank units provide cover, engineers dismantle improvised obstacles, and infantry clears each village systematically. The goal is not just to capture terrain, but to isolate, creating a strategic bottleneck that Russian forces cannot bypass. This push is both physical and psychological. Encircled Russian units witness their escape routes vanish, morale falters, and communication lines collapse. Ukraine's strategy ensures that every gain compounds, amplifying pressure on the enemy while minimizing Ukrainian casualties. Europe observes a calculated operation in real time, a blend of conventional and asymmetric tactics, technology, and intelligence. The southern push demonstrates that success in modern warfare relies not only on battlefield victories, but on cutting the enemy off from essential support. For the civilians near the front, the operations are tense but measured. Evacuations are coordinated, humanitarian corridors maintained, and care is taken to avoid unnecessary casualties. As the southern front lines tighten, Crimea inches closer to isolation, signaling a turning point that could reshape the trajectory of the war entirely. The collapse of Russian morale, signs of defeat. With Crimea increasingly isolated and supply lines in shambles, Russian morale shows unmistakable cracks. On the southern front, soldiers face uncertainty, dwindling resources, and the constant threat of Ukrainian precision strikes. Reports from intercepted communications reveal confusion and frustration among officers. Orders contradict, reinforcements are delayed, and troops question the purpose of their mission. Even elite units feel the weight of encirclement as the gap between expectation and reality widens. Propaganda in Moscow attempts to mask the growing fear, but signs are evident. Videos leak showing abandoned positions, retreating units, and exhausted soldiers. Psychologists note that prolonged isolation disrupted logistics, and constant pressure from a nimble opponent rapidly erode cohesion and willingness to fight. Ukraine's strategy deliberately targets morale. Each tactical victory, each disrupted convoy, and every captured town reinforces the perception of inevitability. Soldiers begin to anticipate defeat before the physical collapse occurs. For Europe, this stage of the campaign highlights a vital lesson. Modern warfare is not only fought with artillery and tanks, but also with psychological strategy. Breaking the will of an opponent can be as decisive as any battlefield conquest. Despite the hardships, Ukrainian forces maintain discipline, precision, and momentum. They understand that exploiting these cracks accelerates victory, reduces casualties, and ensures strategic objectives are achieved efficiently. The signs are clear. Russian forces are increasingly cornered not just physically, but mentally. The southern front is no longer simply a battlefield. It is a mirror reflecting the inevitable consequences of isolation, disrupted command, and relentless pressure. Victory in sight, Ukraine's strategic triumph. After months of relentless pressure, Ukraine stands on the verge of a strategic triumph. The southern front lines, once heavily contested, now reveal the results of meticulous planning, precision strikes, and adaptive strategy. Crimea is increasingly isolated, supply lines severed, and Russian units encircled. Command disarray and collapsing morale amplify Ukraine's advantage, demonstrating that victory is as much about strategy and timing as it is about firepower. Across liberated towns, civilians breathe a cautious sigh of relief. Homes are damaged, but the return of safety and stability reminds them that resilience can overcome even the harshest circumstances. Community networks, volunteers, and local leaders continue their work, supporting the population while Ukrainian forces consolidate control. Europe observes a masterclass in modern warfare. Ukraine's blend of conventional operations, asymmetric tactics, psychological pressure, and technological advantage provides lessons for military strategists and policymakers alike. The push demonstrates that smaller forces, when intelligent, adaptable, and determined, can challenge even the most formidable opponents. Every disrupted supply line, every encircled unit, and every liberated town contributes to a cascading effect that reshapes the battlefield. As the sun sets over the southern front, the message is clear. Ukraine has seized the initiative, reclaimed momentum, and demonstrated strategic depth that few could have anticipated. The victory is not merely territorial. It is a testament to resilience, coordination, and the unyielding spirit of a nation defending its sovereignty. For Europe and the world, it serves as a reminder that careful planning, courage, and innovation can turn the tide even in the most challenging conflicts.